Hey, everybody. I'm David Bloom, co-founder of Next TMT and Next TMT Talks. Today is I think, first ever panel discussion on the state of TVOS, an acronym that is mystifying for many humans, but not in the business of television, which is apparently a really big business. TVOS has become more and more important as they've sort of realized their value as the gatekeeper that can make money off of advertising and other revenue sources. We have with us three people doing really interesting work. Rob Caruso with the Trade Desk and its new TVOS Ventura. Chris Hock from Whale TV, based in the Netherlands, but kind of global, which works with lots and lots of TV OEMs on a variety of things. And Rick Allen, political maven from way back, who these days does probably best known for the work that ViewLift, his company, does with lots and lots of sports teams and providing the apps that they do their stuff with, but also does a lot of entertainment-based things. So a great panel of some very interesting folks. I think I'd love to start real quickly, you guys, kind of real quickly lay out your all's areas of focus and opportunity. So, Rob, what's the opportunity right now for Ventura? It comes in when there were a bunch of incumbents. You used to be at one of the many Google-based TV platforms and ventures. And what's the opportunity that drew you to what Ventura is and what Trade Desk is trying to do?
Sure. So what we're looking to do, and thanks for having me, David. It's great to be here on this panel. What we're looking to do with Ventura OS is extend the OS capability to the various distributors, so TV OEMs, but many others that would distribute a connected TV device or panel, TV itself, and deliver back to them the ability to really control their own destiny with respect to their goals in delivering that CTV device. Typically, a CTV platform in partnering with those device manufacturers has their own goals and their own aspirations and where they're looking to drive value for their platform themselves. And sometimes
And their
those,
limits, right? I mean, I think it's important to say that they bring some predispositions, shall we say, that may not be so beneficial to the content providers, right?
maybe not to the content providers, we can get to that in a little bit. I'm sure others will have a perspective on that. But it doesn't necessarily help the OEM themselves or the distributor themselves in furthering their aspirations. I think what we are doing with Ventura, where we don't have our own content, we don't have our own services, we don't have another ecosystem of products that we're looking to use the TVOS to help distribute, it allows room for our partners to then take over and actually deliver value beyond just the device itself.
So you are, though you don't really look at Swiss and probably speak at least four different languages beyond English. Chris, speaking of Europe, Whale TV is indeed a whale. I think you guys have, you told me 400 OEM clients, and which is a lot. But what's the, I guess, I don't know if there's any low-hanging fruit still out there, but there's definitely fruit to be plucked. What are you guys trying to pluck with what Whale TV does? Because you do a suite of different kinds of things, some of it like Ventura, but some of it very different in tool sets that people like Ventura might take advantage of, right?
Yeah. Thank you first, David, for having me on the program. At Whale, we like to think we're one of the best kept secrets in connected TV. We're a global company headquartered in Singapore, but offices around the world. And what we do is we focus on creating a turnkey smart TV operating system and services for device manufacturers and TV brands that don't have their own OS, they don't have their own content and free TV, and don't have their own ad platform. So there are hundreds of brands around the world that need a connected TV and operating system. And we are an independent that can provide that operating system to these device manufacturers and TV brands. And we're not going to compete with them in retail by selling a TV ourselves. We are a fantastic solution. And as a result, we've been doing this for about 15 years. And we have relationships with about 400 different independent TV brands. And we've deployed about over 100 million connected TV operating systems around the world. We have over 45 million of those monthly active today in about 195 countries around the world.
Okay. Probably doesn't hurt to have headquarters in Singapore closely adjacent anyway to all the manufacturers in China, Hong Kong, South Korea, et cetera, et cetera. There's probably a lot of stuff running around over there that never makes it out of Asia, but is got an audience. India, same thing. Rick, talk a little bit, if you would, as a creator of apps that have to sit on these things, about where your opportunities are now. You guys did a lot of work with the regional sports networks, which have now, in many cases, blown up. Their economic model with the decline of cable has been very difficult. But there's still plenty of work out there, I know, for you guys. What's the opportunity now for a company such as ViewLift?
Sure. Thanks, David. We're a technology platform and we work business to business. So we're powering our clients direct to consumer services. We do have 5 successful RSNs as our client and 15 major U.S. pro sports teams. The channels of Versant, for example, Live Golf and others. And what we're trying to help them do is go direct to consumer by getting on every device possible. Televisions are particularly important for us because most of our clients' content is video in nature. And so that lean back experience that a television set offers, particularly in terms of live games, live movies, etc., that's of absolute essence of their operation. So we're trying to help deploy our clients on all TV platforms, including new TV platforms and the new operating systems that are represented in the discussion today. We're trying to make sure that there's a seamless user experience that goes across all of these devices. It's very difficult because each device has got its own operating system, its own rules. They do change rather rapidly, as we've seen in the device world previously. And we have to reflect our clients' brands across the panoply of devices. So we're enthusiastic to see new folks step into the market and open up new opportunities to reach viewers.
My co-founder, Daniel Frankel, waxed poetic recently in one of our weekly newsletters at Next TMT about finally getting rid of the PlayStation 3 that he had. I note that Netflix and I think YouTube recently have stopped building for that platform. How do you guys, Rick in particular, choose the platforms? You want to be in as many places as possible because distribution is everything, but you're not that big. You don't have an endless supply of engineers laying around just saying, oh, let me go make a PS2 interface or whatever. How do you choose, and how long do these platforms typically, what's their lifespan?
Well, it's a great question. And what we tend to do is take the major audiences for our clients within their respective markets, make sure that we're covering at least the ones that are reaching 80 to 90% of the market in the aggregate, and then let our clients experiment as they wish to do so with additional devices. It's pretty easy in the US to figure out who the big mobile operators are. We know it's Apple and Android. And similarly, in the services like Roku, Apple TV, Fire TV, etc., you know who has the market share. And on connected TVs, we start out with the biggest brands with the greatest penetration in the US. But then again, we work with the clients to spot new opportunities that may be particularly important to them in markets that have real meaning for them, that may not be part of the usual ecosystem for our US clients.
Are there any particular examples that leap to mind of that? I'm curious because obviously the U.S. market is big and diverse. I think there's like 20 platforms or something like that, but it is still not anything like some of the crazy stuff I'm sure Chris sees always, and that Ventura and Trade Desk hope to be seeing as they dip into a more international set of opportunities. I'm just curious, like, do you have a client that's like, well, these guys want to reach baseball fans in Mexico, and this platform's big over there, that kind of thing. Are there stuff like that?
That does happen all the time. We had circumstances in India 5 years ago We had a large entertainment client in that marketplace, and there were particular manufacturers of television that were important to the Indian marketplace. So we will do what the client requires. And operating systems are obviously looking to get developers to bring content to those platforms through their OS. We're delighted to work with them. And the more that they make it easier to quickly understand what's required to get up on that given set, we'll do that and add that to our platform.
Curious, Chris and Rob in particular, what is that pitch about not having bias? I mean, how does that creep in? Are there things that you've seen as you've done your work and you got, okay, we're going to take care of you guys. We're going to build an OS for you, as they may have struggled with something that might, one of the big players. I mean, how big a deal is that for these guys? And as your sort of differentiated selling point. Any thoughts real quick, Chris?
Yeah, I think we look at ourselves as connectors. And David, you kind of started us off with a concept of a gatekeeper, but we kind of view it as more of a connector that is able to bring content partners that want to reach audiences, advertisers that want to reach audiences, and audiences that want to interact with great content and find their content, to bring all those together. And we think that's what is really important here is an independence. And because Whale TV has an independence, we're not going to be competing with the device manufacturer or the TV brand in a retail store with our TVs, because we don't manufacture the physical TVs. We're just the guts, the brains behind it, and operating the platform for the TV. So we think that independence can eliminate, David, to your point, a lot of the bias, and we can do things like we've announced our revenue sharing program, Whale TV revenue share program, where we can cut the TV manufacturers and the device manufacturers back into revenue streams from operating the TV, smart TV operating system on behalf of clients.
That's really important, I'm going to guess, because I also am going to guess that most of your OEMs have margins about as thin as a Gillette razor on their hardware sales, because it is a brutal business. And what you and I think probably Ventura can provide is pretty much ready to go systems that they don't have to develop for. But now you're saying, we'll give you a piece of the honey on the back end to kind of ease some of your pain, which makes sense because they're providing the platform, as it were. Now, Rob, for you guys, Trade Desk is the biggest independent ad platform, right? And that's where Ventura comes out of, is your all sensibility as an ad platform. Now, how does that work in terms of, that set of, just like I get the pitch where we don't have programming we're selling, we don't have hardware we're selling. We do have ads, and those ads make money. You guys make billions of dollars a year in advertising, right? So what's the opportunity there for the hardware maker to use Ventura in terms of revenue, opportunity, back-end revenue for them?
Yep. The value proposition is actually quite similar with respect to the objectivity and the fairness that we position from the DSP side of the business and how we match that up on the Ventura on the TVOS side. So as you alluded to, we're the largest independent DSP. What we don't do is sell or have our own inventory, aggregate our own inventory, and put that and connect that to demand. We solely connect demand to other inventory and supply that shows up in our DSP. On the TVOS side, different than many of the TVOSs in market today, we are not looking for partners and customers of Rick, for instance, to give us a share of their advertising inventory so that we at the platform level can package it back up and bring it to market with, maybe some different context and some differentiated data points. But that's the way the TVOS market works today. You as a distributor of content distribute on the TVOS. You might sell ads against your own content, but you're also giving some of that supply and some of that inventory to the platform. And the platform is an aggregating supply from multiple providers and then trying to also sell against that at market. There's an inherent conflict of interest there where you then also maybe have your own video service that has its own supply. And now you become an ad seller against your own inventory and the inventory of your partners. That is different than the Trade Desk is different. Ventura is different in that sense that We are not looking to bring any of that supply to market. We exist.
You guys have your own. Is that fair to say? We got your own. We don't need yours. Is that kind of the
No, we don't have our own. We are only interested in helping partners that participate in Ventura to give them more engagement, more view time, and help them clean up their supply, ultimately bring it to the DSP and then match it to demand. The conflict of interest would be if we also had our own Ventura channels and our own content service, and we were also trying to match advertising dollars to that. At some point, the advertising dollars can only match to one point. And if you have your own supply and you have your partner supply, that's where the conflict of interest.
Right. Where's the who gets the upside out of that one? So it gets very complicated. I'm curious, areas of focus for each of you all in terms of parts of the world. Chris, you're based out of Singapore. You all are worldwide. What markets are hot for you these days? What opportunities are you all seeing?
Yeah, we're really focused on where our footprint and our current TVs are deployed, which is heavy in LATAM, Europe, and in Asia. We're seeing Europe being a traditional strong market on TV, shifting to streaming and continuing to make that shift like the US has. So that's an area of interest to us, both Western and Central Europe. LATAM also we have a very large footprint down there, especially around Brazil, Argentina, Colombia. So those are markets that are of interest to us. We have a team down there in markets to work with content partners, to work with advertisers and agencies to really make that market work. So that's of interest to us. And then we're looking at other worldwide, again, with TVs around the globe, we have opportunities around South, in addition to South America and LATAM that we talked about, things like Australia, South Africa, and India, and parts of Asia. Mostly an international focus from our point of view, but we think that we are the perfect kind of partner for someone that has a U.S. operations and looking to then extend that, whether it's content that might be attractive overseas or an ad business that might be attractive overseas. So we think we're the perfect partner for someone who already has a strong U.S. operations to work with.
So, Rick, I think of ViewLift as being more U.S. focused, but obviously sports is everywhere. It's these franchises like the NBA are trying to get, they've got Africa operation, a China operation. They're trying to get into Europe. They just did their NBA All-Star game with the international side against two U.S. sides, and I think their last 7 MVPs were all foreign-born. So clearly there's talent and interest and engagement there. And that's just one league. We won't even talk about the vast Major League Baseball connections into Latin America. And now with the Dodgers and Shohei Ohtani and the completely insane Japanese fan base for him, there's a lot of East Asia too. So where are you guys looking to expand? Where are the opportunities? And is it in languages? Is it in sports? Is it in kinds of entertainment? What's your opportunity right now?
Well, first, I had the pleasure of being at that All-Star game as these guests. So
rub it in, buddy.
I was grateful for that opportunity. The bulk of our clients' fan base is in North America, but we've been handling Mexico, for example, for Fox Sports and a predecessor entity that they bought down there. Massive, massive operation because they have soccer, European football rights in Mexico and Mexican football rights, which are very, very powerful audience draws. The opportunity for us, we think, for the next phase of growth is Europe, Latin America, the Middle East. We've always had a strong presence in Asia. We have 2 offices in India, and we've worked pretty heavily bringing content to that marketplace with clients. International expansion is going to be the core of our future.
Yeah, I guess that's what cricket is
Well,
big
it's
and
everything.
Bollywood, right? Yeah.
It's everything. And if you take a look at fan bases for major European football teams, they're entirely global. If it's Real Madrid or Barcelona FC,
right. These guys are international superstars. Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's true that, the largest viewership globally are in sports like European football and cricket and others. But the American sports, as you pointed out, are increasingly attracting foreign players, which is important to then develop an endemic fan base within a foreign country and a region. And I think all leagues are now trying to do that more frequently and more adroitly, because the key to competition is having the very best players in the world. You outlined how well that's played out for the NBA, which I think is the model.
Yeah, I mean, it really is a model. But I don't want to minimize Major League Baseball. I mean, what they've been able to do in South and Central America and Mexico and the Caribbean is well known.
Absolutely.
But
Yep.
Korean stars, the Japanese stars, the occasional Australian pretty good player, that whole side of the Pacific, there's a huge possible fan bases there and long history. I mean, Japan's been playing baseball forever, and now we have some of the greatest players in the game, including the superhuman Shohei. Actually, Japanese for superhuman is Shohei. That's how you translate the word. That being said, so Rob, in terms of like, where do you start? I'm going to have a new TVOS. I'm going to carve it out of thin air because we're brilliant like tech dudes, and we're going to put it out there in the market. Like, where do you start? I think it's fascinating. It's a fascinating startup story that's worth chronicling somewhere, somehow.
It's a great question. We are starting where we think there's the most need and the most opportunity. So we are focused here in the US for the most part. North America, US focus primarily to launch. You have a burgeoning CTV ad ecosystem. It is where we have been most successful with the core trade desk, DSP work, and our client relationships. So building off of those, the natural extension of where Ventura can fit in seems like a logical starting point. With that said, it's also a very crowded market, a very mature market from a TVOS perspective.
Right. There's several big players that are just sitting there kind of not going anywhere.
Big players, very much controlled more by the retail market than anything else as far as what TVs are going to show up in which stores, which ultimately influence more so than anything still what a consumer may load up into their SUV and leave.
Well, we really saw this with the Vizio takeover by Walmart and the follow-on effects that had on people like Roku, right? All of a sudden, their TVs were not on the biggest physical retailer, I guess, in the world. I mean, did that open up some opportunities? I guess both Chris and Rob, did that open up some opportunities for people to go, maybe we should do something else because we're not going to be on Vizio?
It may open up some opportunities. I think what it's done is it's just recalibrated sort of the entire dynamics of the partner ecosystem between the retailers, the OEMs themselves, and the TVOSs. There's many other players in the ecosystem, but if you just focus on those three for a second, a tie-up with Walmart and Vizio creates a bit of a vacuum where Vizio leaves other retailers and becomes exclusive to Walmart.
It's no longer on Target. It's no longer on Best Buy. It's only on Walmart.
Creates a small opportunity for other OSs to go fill that vacuum. It also, though, creates some crowdedness in Walmart itself, where they're going to want to extend, right? If Vizio is shipping X million units per year and you're losing some of that outside of Walmart, you're going to want to pick that back up likely in Walmart, which pushes some other OSs out. So it's a bit of a musical chairs. What it does, though, is it signals, I think, to the larger market that there's value beyond just the point of sale of the TV. And you mentioned those razor thin margins before. I think what it signals is there's much more value to come from that set that's sold and installed in a consumer's home for 5 to 7 years than just that moment, that point of sale in, say, 2025 or 2024 or 2026. So you're starting to see more interest in more collaborative tie-ups between the retailers, the OEMs, and the OSs themselves to create value all the way around. And that is primarily where Ventura is focused. We're less focused on point of sale. We're less focused on getting direct revenue from each TV sold, and in turn, passing that more back to the OEMs. Where we get value is having exposure and visibility into the CTV supply chain from an advertising perspective on these devices.
Okay, so it's really the data almost is more valuable to you than mere dollars for an ad sold. It's data, like it helps you all.
The ability to participate in the advertising supply chain on these devices.
Yeah. I moderated a panel last week at the at DEG's NTech Fest on in-car entertainment, and what struck me was the growing realization by the automakers how much they are like the TV OEMs, right? And that there's this whole opportunity to create, it's not just entertainment, it's a wide variety of experiences within the car that you can then build a subscription service around and charge and make money on beyond the initial sale of the vehicle. And that says, boy, that sounds like TV, but it's also complicated because, again, it's a several year purchase. It's one of the biggest purchases people make in their lives. And I think people are only sort of dimly starting to understand that the interface matters. One of the things I found interesting was it's not just your mobile phone on wheels, and there's a whole bunch of other things you can do, and different parts of the car can have different kinds of entertainment. To me, what's interesting about this from the TV maker is how you all differentiate your connected TV experience from what's on the big two in mobile. What do you do differently? What do you offer that's a different experience, a smarter experience? And as Rick said, this lean back with a wide variety of stuff that's on the best screen in their house. How do you make your operating system better and more engaging? One of the things we've seen with streaming apps is how terrible most of them were in their first few years. And Netflix had figured out because they had a decade to get better at it, right? How are you guys making these experiences better? Is AI transforming what you guys do in terms of the received experience? Talk a little bit about that. You want to start, Rick?
Yeah.
Oh, you got some thoughts, Chris? I mean, real quickly.
Yeah, just quicker, just to tie into kind of the conversation we had earlier around kind of sports leagues and bleeding into international. It's great. One great opportunity in this new streaming world with connected TV operating systems is leveraging the real estate on the screen, right? So unlike traditional TV where you just turn on, you get this blank EPG, hundreds of channels. Here we have a great branding opportunity. You can see in my background here, we call that the masthead on Whale TV. And so we can do creative kind of things to deliver better content experiences to customers. So, for example, when NFL did the game last year, I think September 5th in Sao Paulo, right, the NFL football game down in Sao Paulo, we did a takeover of all TVs in Brazil to feature, hey, tune into the game and show, information and content about the game right on the TV. So these are kind of, I think, new unique things that can help differentiate TVs and really leverage the connected TV experience versus a traditional, maybe more flat experience.
It is interesting to think about that extra real estate. Rick, how do you guys take advantage of that? I mean, I got to presume, one of the cool things that I've seen in recent times has been this rise of like secondary play-by-play conversations. The Manning cast on NFL games is an obvious example, but I think NBA, I want to say Peacock is doing this now with they've got a secondary one with a lot of data stuff and a lot of overlays and graphics and all that stuff, which I think is kind of cool if you're a data geek. None of us here, I would say, are data geeks, right, Rob? None of us, particularly at Trade Desk. But, if you like data during a game, they're really showcasing that. Is this the kind of thing that you have to be able to enable, Rick, on your end, or how does that work?
We do enable it on our end. And the key that we found is viewer choice. It's easy for engineers to think about wonderful ideas they can dream up and actually implement. It's harder to figure out what moves the dial for a sports fan or an entertainment viewer. And I think we've tried very hard to both R&D opportunities to see what audience take-up is, but in all instances, try to make it very easy for a particular subscriber or viewer to opt in or opt out. Those L bars with data are incredibly useful for folks who are playing fantasy sports, who are gambling, etc.
No.
Many
I'm
viewers,
shocked I am at the casino gambling.
I understand your surprise.
Yes.
But for many other viewers, they want the whole screen occupied by the live game. The notion of secondary audio, different play-by-play is really important. I mean, one of the reasons that regional aggregations of sports rights, whether it's an RSN or otherwise, are still so powerful is that there's a real loyalty built up in market by sports fans to their own broadcasters, to the play-by-play and color folks they've grown up listening to. One of the difficulties when a game gets nationalized and bumped up to that level of distribution is that you don't have the hometown crew on the call. And so there are instances where it's important to offer that kind of optionality. But
I mean, they
greater and
connect
greater,
back to the individual players and all that stuff and
that's
the
right.
history of their time with the team. And it's just not the same as having the national guy fly in for 36 hours and then fly back
No, it
out.
really isn't. And it doesn't feel authentic to that local fan base. But greater and greater viewer choice is the clear direction here. The NBA made a great investment in additional cameras within facilities so that you can capture almost any imaginable view. And those offerings will continue to expand, certainly in sports and in live entertainment of various types. And I think even in some of the areas we may not think of as being as prone to personalization and individual choice, news, financial information, etc. With a
Talk about
moment,
gambling right now. Boy, that
well,
the market.
gambling is part of it, but even
Right.
for
No, I'm just saying that the state of the market and its volatility these last few
yes,
days has made
well,
it like gambling a little bit.
indeed, and there will be more and more tools offered by the CNBCs and MS Nows of the world to help their viewers navigate through an overcrowded environment to find what they are really looking for, whether it's a financial utility at the moment to help them navigate a market that dropped 1,000 points in the first hour and is now trading up
For example.
as an example. All of those things bedevil us as individual consumers. And if you think of the content companies as being a repository of enormous talent, particular information and experience within a discipline, then how do you translate that across in real time in the optimum way for each consumer, each investor, each sports fan, whatever the category happens to be? And the technology is allowing greater and greater individualization. So it's no longer a one-to-many push, but it gets a little bit closer to one-to-one, which obviously is what the digital experience is geared to.
Yeah. So, Rob, I'm going to let you have the last word on this. Some of what Rick and Chris are talking about also feels like a really great opportunity to work advertising into the margins of these big screens and do interesting things with that are actually ever more relevant. We certainly have seen lots of conversation. God almighty, at Intech, again, they were talking about Jennifer Aniston's sweater. This is the most famous sweater that no one has ever bought, ever, right?
Ever.
Except maybe in China, where they have gazillion billion dollars worth of e-commerce online always tied into like influencers and stuff.
There's a lot we can do. I think one of the things the discussion we often focus on is, should we do it? So building off of what I think Rick was touching on too, there's so much innovation. The beauty with AI right now is we can get through that innovation so much more quickly, so much more cost efficiently. It doesn't mean that you have to deploy all those features. It doesn't mean you have to deploy all those innovations. So we still need to rely on strong intuition, whether it's with an engagement feature around sports, whether it's with a new advertising format. But I still think good judgment, good research, good feedback from your users still ultimately rules the day. We can just do a lot more in a lot less time for a lot less money.
So things are possible. They may not pencil out, like Rick was saying. You got to figure out what people want, but there's things that are possible.
And when you figure out, so I've done research for years on AI relative to TV features. It's a space I focused on. And when you put new concepts in front of folks and you label them with AI, it doesn't play well with your average TV consumer. We all talk about AI all day, every day. People in tech talk about it. People in all facets of business are talking about it. But the consumer in their home that just spent a few $100s on a 55-inch, 65-inch, or larger screen. They want to be entertained. The constant meme is that they have to spend too much time hunting and pecking for what they want. The constant meme with sports is they can't figure out where their game is because the game of the week got moved to this service or that service. So helping them with those, listening to the user and helping them with those challenges and moving the technology to the background is, in my belief, the winning recipe for how you apply AI or any technology, right? The consumer doesn't care whether you're using machine learning or otherwise to drive the algorithm. They care that you nailed it so that when they turn on the TV, they can find exactly what they want.
That's a fine place for us to wrap this up. Thank you, guys. I'm David Bloom with Next TMT and Next TMT Talks, here with Rob Caruso of Ventura, the TVOS of the Trade Desk. Don't forget that article. It's just like the Ohio State University, the Trade Desk. Chris Hook with Whale TV, Singapore-based and everywhere. And Rick Allen of ViewLift. Thank you guys so much for a really smart conversation.